Hello.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. You are not just on time, you're early. Very impressive.
Yeah, I'm sitting next to my computer, my iPad, and watching the time. I'm always panicked that I'm not going to get him on the spot on time, so I give myself time to make mistakes. And since I'm getting better every day, I'm making less mistakes.
It can be very tricky to enter a virtual room, the right virtual room.
That's right, yeah. Zoom is easy. I like Zoom.
Yes, it's my favorite too.
Where are you? Are you in Philadelphia?
Yes. I'm in my kitchen in Philadelphia.
Hey, Nelson.
Who's there?
It's Alexander. How are you?
Oh, hi.
Been quite a while.
Oh, there you are. Oh, hi. No, long time no see. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
I keep forgetting that even though everyone else on the screen lives in the same probably 2-mile radius, that no one sees anyone anymore in person. So
it doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly.
Philadelphia next door, it doesn't matter anymore.
In some ways that is harder, of course, but in some ways it is nice that, I went to my cousin's baby's bris in Colorado and then to a friend's simcha in New York, all in, 25 minutes.
Amazing.
Hello. So many people are here. Hi, Lorraine. Hello. I'm so sorry. I don't see your name on the screen. Can you remind me?
Who, me?
No.
No. My name
on my screen, well, I guess he's the gentleman in the blue plaid shirt.
Oh, yeah. 24-20-35.
Exactly. That's his code name.
That's his code name, yeah. Jerry Sachs.
Someone outed you, Jerry. Wonderful.
Another half coming up very soon.
Oh, there you are. Yes, I'm trying desperately to learn names, although it is very hard when everyone's face is so tiny. Where is your background a picture you took, Alexander, or is it one of the stock photos?
It's actually a Jackson Pollock.
Oh, wow. You know what? It looks a little bit like snow on trees from back here.
Because my office is such a mess.
I understand. As I think I shared last week, there's like a big pile of mess that is sitting on the floor behind my chair that I like desperately shoved off of the counter behind me. So.
Well, we don't show. We don't have to talk about it. We'll imagine you just neat or well organized.
Exactly. I'm a very neat person.
Yeah. But we see it looks very nice.
I forget who's the interior decorator or organizer that was here last time. Is that you, Tammy? I think it might have been. She showed me her beautifully organized closet. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
So impressed with how punctual everyone is.
801. 801, yeah. We're not muted, by the way. Should I mute us? Yeah. Okay.
That way you can whisper about all of us in between.
This is my daughter's bat mitzvah Parsha, so.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Yes, she really loved Vayera. There was a lot of good stuff and a lot of very difficult things to talk about in this Parsha for a 12-year-old girl, so.
Yes. My bat mitzvah Parsha was Vayikra, which was challenging in its sort of dry, abstract, not relatable nature. But I think now that I tutor sometimes, I've come to understand every Parsha is actually hard for a 12 or 13-year-old. These are
That's true. That's true. But when you talk about like Lot and his daughters,
yeah,
she was very upset about that. So as well she should be. So.
Well, hopefully we're going to go to a happy place today.
Okay, good.
I couldn't dwell in our anxiety anymore. How has everyone's week been? What's the feeling in Chicago? I live in the great state of Pennsylvania where the campaign goes on. So
Okay.
there's a very heightened tension that feels very palpable in the air around here as everyone stalks the government website that shows how many votes have been counted and whether yours has been recorded. Hey, Tammy. But how is
Hello.
everyone feeling in Chicago?
I think people are anxious. People are definitely anxious
Yeah.
here.
Well, I heard one on CBS News. I heard the American Psychological Society made a study, asked some organization to make a poll to see how people were feeling, the level of anxiety. It was sky high, 75 or 80% of people registered feeling anxious. And the guy from the society said, well, this is to be expected because anxiety is a great source of uncertainty is a great source of anxiety. Once the certainty, good or bad, finally comes up, then we are able to deal even with bad news better than with uncertainty. So things will get better.
Yes. I mean, I hope so.
Once we hear the bad news, 50% will hear bad news and 50% will hear good news. So
hopefully more like 80-20 by now. We'll see. Hello, Hearts. How are you? How is the popcorn in the microwave?
We didn't do it, and
Oh, no.
and then we haven't given it out yet. Our cleaning lady got all excited about it, so she's going to take some home. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. My family actually did something that feels sort of radical. We went camping on Monday and Tuesday
Wow.
to escape the election news cycle. So we turned our phones off and we headed out. And it was very cold here, unfortunately. It's much nicer out now. But I had voted early and my husband voted when we got home Tuesday afternoon, and it was really wonderful. Maybe it wasn't so civically minded, but it was very family oriented.
That's okay. It's sanity making, and man, you need that.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
We took our dogs into the forest preserve today. It was a blast. They had so much fun and got so happily dirty.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I think we'll get started if that's okay. I feel like 9:05 is a good time. And we can always bring people in if they come in a little bit later. So as we were sort of organically saying, this is an uncertain time. And I think that the Parsha opens with the same sort of palpable anxiety, right? Abraham is lying in the door of his tent, and Rashi explains that that's because he's just had his Brit Milah. He's in a lot of pain, right? And then he goes through this like shock of hearing this exciting but surprising news about having a new baby in his older age. Then he goes on to argue with God over the righteous people of Sodom and Gomorrah. The familial tragedy befalls Lot, as Debbie referenced. Sarah is kidnapped when they go down to Egypt. After her return, she then asks Abraham to banish Ishmael, his son. And then God asks Abraham to sacrifice the remaining son. And so it's just a lot of tension and fear, and I think uncertainty about what will happen. And last week we looked at Abraham's strengths. And so tonight I thought we could look at Sarah Imenu, because I think she has an interesting coping mechanism. And that's the power of laughter and her laughter. And so I want us to look, and let's see, I'm going to share my screen, right? Is that what I think that's what we did last time, and that was good. Let me just get to the right place here. And to look at that pasuk, that opening pasuk of Sarah's laughter, and then to explore some of the different ways we could interpret it and how laughter is viewed sort of generally within our tradition. So let's see. So does everyone see the source sheet here? Hopefully, yes. Or you have it on your own. I think that it was sent out in the email also, if you prefer it that way. So if someone could read, if they don't mind, the first pasuk in Hebrew or English, really whatever you're comfortable with, but this first source, Bereshit 18:12. Just anybody jump in.
And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I am withered, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old?"
Thank you. Excellent. So I wonder, if you guys were the screenwriters for the movie and you're trying to tell the actress who plays Sarah what to do, how to behave, what does the laugh look like? Like, what do you hear in your head? Is it a nervous laugh? Is it sort of like hysterical laughter? Is she like laughing with tears running down her face? Is she holding her belly as she laughs? Is it like a snort? What comes to mind?
Disbelieving.
Okay. Good. That's a good one.
Do you hear what he said? She's keeping it to herself. She's not sharing it, perhaps for fear of hurting her husband's feelings.
Beautiful. So you picked up on the word to herself, right?
Yes.
That it's like an internal laughter. Great. So maybe no one hears it at all. Maybe it's just sort of inside of herself. Beautiful. Those are certainly two of the well-established readings of this piece. And I think they make a lot of sense, but hopefully we can see some happier interpretations as well. Right. So the Ramban, like Alexander, was that? Said, he interprets it as a disbelief edging towards like a sarcasm, maybe, right? He says with derision. And he explains that when someone laughs besimcha, with joy, they laugh in their mouth. And he quotes a pasuk from Tehillim, Az yimale schok pinu, right? But aval schok halev, schok balev, the laughter that's in your heart, lo ya'amar besimcha. It's not with reference to joy. And so he interprets that bikir ba as a sign that it's not a good laughter. And I think that we could even think of this laughter as what Aviva Zorenberg calls the hysterical laughter of tension. I am a nervous laugher, as my husband will attest to. Like when one of my kids takes a nosedive, like I just laugh because I'm nervous and I hope they're okay, but I can't help it. I don't know if I'm in good company or I've now turned everyone away from me. See here, I'm laughing already. So I certainly understand that laughter of disbelief, of tension, of anxiety. But I think there are a few other paths we can go on. And so the Baal Shem Tov has a beautiful teaching. And here I just quoted it from Rabbi Sarah Horowitz's blog. She's my teacher, friend and colleague, Rebbe, the co-president and co-founder and president of Yeshivat Maharat. And she wrote a beautiful blog that inspired me to dig deeper into laughter. And this is one of the sources she talks about on this week's Parsha. Does someone want to read this paragraph? So it's the Baal Shem Tov in the words of Rabbi Horowitz.
There is a Hasidic teaching based on the ideas of the Baal Shem Tov that God created the world with simcha, ahava, and tzchok, through joy, love, and laughter. To create something from nothing, the primary ingredient is simcha. The Baal Shem Tov goes on to explain that when a king laughs, his kavod, dignity and kingship, is diminished. And it is in this state that anyone can approach the king. Normally, you have to go through the secretary or the guards before you can petition the king. But when he is in a cheerful state, when his dignity is diminished, even the lowly servants can approach and greet him. So too, when God created the world, God's joy caused God to become diminished. God withdrew from the world, engaged in tzimtzum, contraction, and that tzimtzum created a void. It is within that void that the world was created. In that space where God's laughter appeared, the world emerged.
Thank you. So I think that's beautiful, and there's so much to unpack here. But what Rabbi Sarah and I think the Baal Shem Tov, what she thinks the Baal Shem Tov are suggesting is that Sarah's laughter opened up a space bikirba. It wasn't like an internal snort. It was in order to put aside maybe the anxiety and fear of being barren her whole life, or having lost her chance at having Yishmael be the progeny of her marriage. And she could create this space. And it was in that space in her womb that Yitzchak was able to be created and to be born. And so just as Hashem creates the world through laughter, Sarah creates Yitzchak. And laughter can make a space for creation, which I think is a really beautiful idea. And in fact, I just saw an article recently about COVID clowning in Israel in hospitals, that some of the nurses and doctors are wearing those red noses on top of their N95 masks and under their face shields, because people are intimidated and they're scared of the doctors with all of those layers of protection between them and the patients. And they found that clowning was a way to break down the barrier so patients would be honest and communicative with their doctors, which is so interesting to me, because I think it's really what the Baal Shem Tov is talking about, right? That when you laugh, you're more approachable, you're easier to talk to. Maybe Sarah had put up so many barriers between her and Abraham, even, that her laughter started to break down some of those barriers, make herself more accessible and open to her marriage, and then to being able to have children. So I wonder, I invite anyone to jump in if they have any thoughts or reflections, or I can keep going. It's always hard to read the Zoom room. So that's one. So far we've explored. Do you have something? I don't mean to.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. It just was
No, go ahead.
making me think that sort of makes her responsible also for her infertility, if she had to laugh, I mean, was she that grim of a person that she never laughed and therefore never was able to open her rechem for children? Which is kind of, I sort of like
that's
blaming
the
the
icky
victim a
piece
lot.
of it. I have to be honest, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Maybe the space was in her all along, and it had nothing to, right? Infertility, obviously, we know, especially today, has nothing to do with how cheery someone is, or how amenable she is to having babies. But that maybe being a creator is actually a powerful thing. So maybe it's when time, and now today medicine, or whatever the things are that sort of align God's will to make a woman be able to have a baby, that laughter of creation is like a power that she can revel in. But I certainly take the criticism that it's a little bit more blaming than I had seen it when I first fell in love with it. I hear that. That's fair. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
So right. So maybe both of those have sort of a tinge of either sadness or anxiety, right? That Sarah was able to create a space, although what that means about what was before is unknown, or that she was disbelieving or sort of scornful of her ability to have a baby. But there's another angle that I think is lovely and opens up more ideas, is that laughter can be very healing, right? Because after Sarah has Yitzchak, she says, "Tzchok asali Elokim," right? That God has brought me laughter. Kol hashomea Yitzchak li, and everyone who hears will laugh with me. And Rashi explains that the laughter is healing, right? He says, that the Midrash says that akarot nifkadu ima, that other barren women were remembered with her. Harbe cholim nitrafu bo bayom, that lots of sick people were healed on the day Yitzchak was born. Harbe tfilot na'anu ima, lots of people's petitions were answered that day. V'ros chok haya ba'olam, and there was just great rejoicing in the world. And I think that is something that we now know, to be true, that laughter releases healing endorphins, it oxygenates our blood, it relieves stress. There is a yoga class I went to once that had a laughing section where everyone had to start laughing, and it feels very awkward at first, but like the laughing circle is very powerful, and you feel like your lungs opening. It takes a lot of lung power to laugh. And so this idea that that laughter can be healing, I think is very powerful. And so perhaps Sarah, through no fault of her own, is barren, and that is so hard. It can be hard to find laughter at that time. And once she has her baby, the laughter is contagious. It spreads throughout the world, right? Haya ba'olam, not just in her community, not just the people who saw her joy, but it really spread throughout the world, and it healed people. And I think we could all benefit from a laughing circle these days, right? That laughter, if we can give it the space that it needs, can be very healing. Wonderful. So the last, I think, exploration of Sarah's laughter that we can do is to think about laughter as a bridge builder. So a few psukim later, right, the whole story of Yitzchak's notification of his impending conception through his weaning is a very short period of time, a few prakim at most, right? But the Torah tells us that Vigdal hayelad v'yigamal, that when Yitzchak was weaned, vayas Avraham mishteh gadol b'yom higamel et Yitzchak. And so Rashi asks, what made it a mishteh gadol? Was the food catered from, what's it called, milts, right? Like, was it delicious food? Was it super fancy? Were there a lot of people there? No, Rashi says it was gadol because the Gedolei Hador were there. And he names three people, Shem, Ve'ever, and Avimelech. Can anyone remember who Avimelech is in this week's Parsha? The $100 question. Avimelech is the king of Egypt. So he is the person who forcibly took Sarah earlier in our Parsha, right? Kidnapped her, brought her to his palace for who knows what reasons. And yet Abraham sends him an invitation to the weaning party, which I think is quite remarkable. And there is this idea that maybe a sort of contentious idea. Rashi explains that cynics believed after reading this week's Parsha that Yitzchak is likely Avimelech's genetic son, right? If you take an infertile couple that for years have tried to get pregnant, and then the woman is taken forcibly to the palace for, what we wouldn't want to say, but what we know might produce a child. And then suddenly she has a child with a young, much more healthy king as opposed to her husband, that there's this question about paternity. And that is uncomfortable. I had never heard it before I went looking a few years ago. I'm not sure how I feel about that midrash, but I think the idea that Avraham would nonetheless invite Avimelech, who might be the actual paternal line of Yitzchak, or who maybe just is the king who stole his wife away at the beginning of the Parsha, is a big olive branch, more than I would think I would be able to do. And Aviva Zorenberg talks about the feast and laughter as a way of bridge building. And I think that she is thinking specifically about this midrash about Avimelech, but it could be true about many people. She has a beautiful book, Genesis, The Beginning of Desire, where she talks a little bit about this. Does someone want to read just this paragraph in English? Totally
Like
fine.
the Suda, the food of the feast, laughter is a mode of communion. Michael Tournier writes of the phenomenon of cryptophagia, the private language of twins, which thrives at the expense of normal speech and of social intelligence. In the twinless world, the phenomenon is paralleled by that of laughter, because when two individuals laugh together, and only then, they come near to the mystery of cryptophagia. At such times, they are using a pseudo-language, laughter, based on a common ground, which, unintelligible in itself, has as its function to narrow the distance between their respective positions, which divides them from that common base. The mouth filled with real laughter, like the food of the feast, audible and sensible to others, is an image representing the end of days, the overcoming of separateness and closure. In this world, it remains a mere possibility that constantly destroys itself.
Amazing. Thank you. And I think anyone who's traveled to a foreign country with a language that they don't speak is aware of this sort of laughter as conversation, right? Someone says something in their language, the other person doesn't understand. They sort of laugh, that causes you to laugh. You know, eating, certainly, breaking bread brings people together, but I think that laughter as a human language is a powerful idea. And sometimes laughter can be misunderstood, right? Sarah laughs and maybe as screen director, you thought that it was like a happy belly laugh, but it comes off as like a snort of derision, right? But that it can also be a really good connector between people, and that it is, it helps people narrow the distance between their respective positions, which divides them from that common base. And I think that especially today, in a country that feels so very divided, maybe laughter is a really powerful tool that we can use. The last line of this sort of idea of Eva Zornberg's is about the birth of Isaac, initiating the period of feasting and laughter, of the bearable lightness of being. And so on a slightly lighter note, I thought of Mary Poppins. I don't know if there are any movie buffs here, but there's a scene in the movie, we're all gonna sing, so prepare yourselves over the next 25 seconds, in which Uncle Albert and Bert, the chimney sweep, sing a song about loving to laugh. And they start to levitate towards the ceiling as they laugh. And the understanding, I think, is that laughter can cause one to float, or it can lighten the mood. Right after an awkward silence, if someone sort of chuckles, maybe it brings the mood back together. So I put the lyrics here. We're all going to be very brave. And I have some backup for us. And we're just going to listen to a very short clip. And if you would like to sing along, I think that would be excellent. Love to laugh. Loud and long and clear. Come on, I can't hear you. Love to laugh.
Laugh. Ha, 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 ha.
It's worse every year. The more I laugh, the more I fill with glee. The more the glee, the more I'm merrier me. Excellent. Thank you to everyone who joined in. Maybe you feel lighter already. I'm not even such a movie buff, but I have such fond memories of that movie. And my daughter loves the new version and now has come to love the old version. But I think that idea of something powerful enough to float us to the ceiling is really amazing. So I think in this week's Parsha, we can see lots of different modalities for laughter, right? There's the laughter of disbelief, a laughter of making space for creation, a laughter that brings healing, whether it's actual physical healing by oxygenation and endorphin release, or just a laughter that makes you feel good. And laughter can cross boundaries and cross languages that we don't always speak, to bring a commonality between us. And so I think Sarah Imenu maybe sensed some of those parts of laughter, and that's why she chose to laugh, right? She could have chosen to say, I can't believe it, or to have cried, tears of joy or sadness, but to choose to laugh is a powerful thing. And so I just want to end over the next 10 minutes or so by looking at two pieces of Gemara text that I think really highlight the importance of laughter, and then to end on one sort of like broader note about laughter. And so this first text from Pesachim, which I love, is a practice of Rava. And Rava is a third generation Amora, and he's the head of the yeshiva of Pumbedita. And he models creating a space for levity before the trepidation of teaching, which I think is beautiful, right? It's a way to get students to laugh, to create that space maybe inside of themselves for learning and for Torah, right? So it says, Ki hai de Rava makame de patach lahu l'Rabanan, when he gets up to speak before his students, Amar Milta Dichuta. He would say some humorous comment. And I feel like you learn this in rabbinical school, right? To open with a joke. Every Dvar Torah should have some kind of joke. And like we learn it from Rabbah, that he wanted to start by setting his students at ease. And to me, that like makes me think of the diminishing a king by laughing, right? That he wanted to be accessible to his students, or he wanted to open that space for creation with his students. Or maybe he knew that some people came like to the Beit Midrash on a bad morning and it just helped lighten the mood or make people feel better. And sure enough, Badchu Rabbanan, the rabbis would be cheered. And it's not that he just sat and told jokes or like, you know, shot the breeze with his students. Labasof yativ ba'emta v'patach b'shma'ata, that he would sit in trepidation to begin teaching his Torah. So he took Torah learning very seriously, but maybe equally seriously was this idea that he had to open in laughter, which I thought was beautiful. And the second story is Eliyahu Hanavi story. I love those stories in the Gemara. Elijah the prophet makes lots of appearances. And so this is a story, there's a man named Rabbi Broka Choza, who was found in the market of Bei Lefet. And Eliyahu Hanavi would appear to him there in the marketplace. And they would look for people who had a share of the world to come. So I cut out like the middle of this bigger story where Rabbi Baroka Choza is looking around, and this person, whether we want to think of him as a person or like a little angel sitting on his shoulder, comes and says like, who do you think is meritorious of going to the next world, to the world to come? And so they're looking around the marketplace and they see two brothers come in. And so Eliyahu says to Rabbi Baroka, he says, these two brothers, they also have a share in the world to come. And so Rabbi Baroka is really curious, like there's nothing obvious about why they would have a share in the world to come so clearly. And so he goes over to the brothers and he says, Amar lahu mai uvdaichu, what is your job? Which to me is already an interesting question. To assume that your job somehow is your ticket to the world to come, right? It's kind of like in, I could tell you guys, you're Midwesterners. In DC, right? People are very type A. And like at a party, people don't ask like, what do you enjoy doing? Or how old are your kids? What do you do, right? And so that's, Rabbi Baruch goes right to that. But sure enough, it is what they do that seems to matter. Because Amrule, they say to him, Inshe beduche, right? That same word of biduchuta, and badchu, beduche, were people who make other people happy, right? It's translated here as we're jesters, COVID clowns, right? Whatever we want to think of them as. And anan mavdechinan atzive, we cheer up sad people. Or alternatively, if we don't want to take it to such a place of levity, right? Ki chazinan beitre deitlahu tigra badehu. If two people are fighting, then we strive to help them make peace. So either they're actually joke tellers, stand-up comedians, or court jesters, or clowning nurses, or they're people who strive to make peace, to make the mood lighter. But either way, it seems to me that both in Psachim and in Tani, the message feels very clear that the rabbis of the Gemara really appreciate the value of laughter as a connection piece, right? Sort of like Aviva Zornberg saw it, or as just a way to make people happy, to cheer them up, to heal them, or create space, right? A lot of the different models of Sarah Imenu seem to me to come out here in the Gemara as values for why laughter is so important. And I always think of the rabbis of the Gemara as like very serious men. And so this is very heartening to me to see that they really place a high value here. Does anyone have any comments? Everyone's very quiet. I get tired of hearing my own voice. If anyone wants to rescue me from myself.
I'm on Zoom right now.
Okay, well, I'll read, or maybe someone will read this piece where Meir Soloveitchik writes about this week's Parsha in relation to when we read it on Rosh Hashanah. So he's talking about Rosh Hashanah in his article, but I think he, again, hits on so many of the different ways we can interpret Sarah's laughter. And unfortunately, he talks about it through the lens of Abraham, but certainly Sarah is the laugher, in my opinion here. So we're going to add her in. So Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik says that Jewish laughter is bound up with Jewish faith, right? And I think we see that already. And that Abraham and Sarah's child is named for laughter because his birth inverted expectations, and it vindicated Abraham and Sarah's faith and laid the foundations of a people who would confound those expectations again and again, thereby vindicating this faith throughout the generations. Right? Maybe that like laughter of derision is actually okay because you have this moment of like, this can't be happening. And then your faith is vindicated. And that is a powerful thing for a people to have, especially a persecuted people like ourselves. So he goes on to say, which is why for centuries on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, Abraham and Sarah's children have gathered in synagogues all over the world, remembered the birth of Isaac, and beseeched Almighty God to grant them a year of life, love, and laughter. And I think that idea of asking God for not just a year of life and health and parnasa, right, but to say we want a year where we can laugh. And I don't think that means, God, please give us a year where everything is funny or everything is good, but a year where we can use that tool of laughter to create good and funny and healing and powerful moments between ourselves, even when maybe the world is not filled with laughter on sort of a natural plane. And so my hope for all of us, as hopefully we enter a weekend of less uncertainty, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Cancer, but that we we can even just laugh in the face of uncertainty to make ourselves feel better and our community feel better. And I welcome all thoughts.
That would be a nervous laugh.
Certainly right now, I think when you watch the news, if you laugh, right? Sometimes we say all you could do is laugh, right? But it definitely stems from anxiety for sure. Okay. Any last takers, last comments? Maybe just give me a sense, thumbs up, thumbs down. Did I sell you?
Thanks, Yael. It was good. We're all tired and stressed, and maybe sometimes it's nice just to hear somebody else tell us what to think, or what you're thinking.
Well,
at least.
I love
Not
the
tell us
power.
what to think, but tell us what you're thinking.
I'm happy to share
Thank you.
anytime.
No, this was perfect. This is what I needed.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
So
No,
this is great.
I thought was powerful. I'm really thinking a lot. I'm going to be thinking a lot about the message, laughter, and all the different meanings, so many levels. Could be joy, could be fear, could be nervousness. So, and I never saw laughter explored with so many angles like this. It's associated with creation, and I think of love and the expression of love. Creation brings up. I think that's coronating in the birth of Yitzhak a year later. So a lot of stuff.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I totally understand the exhaustion. Being anxious is very exhausting. Feeling uncertain. Wonderful. Well, then I will leave you. I will not make you do a laughing circle since no one's saying I'm not sure anyone would laugh with me. But I encourage you to try it in the comfort of your own private space, but alone or with a family member. I think that there's something very powerful to forcing laughter in a time where you might not feel it. And I hope that we will walk in the footsteps of Sarah Imenu through this week's Parsha. And I look forward to seeing many of you next Thursday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you. Good night.
Shalom. Good night, all.
Night.
Shabbat
Night.
shalom.